This is Steve Cochran, and this is a special edition of Live from My Office, maybe a special limited series, if you will. When I took the break right before season 4 started, one of the things I got involved with is an old friend, Patty Steele, an actual radio legend and big star from New York City. She's heard every morning with Scott Shannon on WCBS-FM. And we work together at Z100 in the morning. And we've been involved with various projects, been friends for a very long time. Love her. She's great. And she was doing a podcast. I, of course, am doing Live from My Office. Thank you for listening to it. So we got together to do something new. This is called The Deep Six. Pretty self-explanatory when you give it a listen, and I'd like to hear what you think. So drop me an email at thecochranshow@gmail.com. That's thecochranshow@gmail.com. That's it. Hope you like it. Let me know, even if you don't. thecochranshow@gmail.com. And now on with a little something new you'll hear over the next couple of Fridays. This is The Deep Six.
The Deep Six. 6 stories from your world in 30 minutes or less. Hosted by Patty Steele and Steve Cochran. The Deep Six is on.
Welcome again to another edition of The Deep Six. That's my very good friend, Patty Steele, live from New York. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening.
Yes, exactly.
And how are you?
How am I?
Yes.
Wow. Thank you for asking.
Sure.
Do you really want the truth, or do you want just the good, quick answer? I'm fine.
For the sake of the audience, let's lie to them. How are you?
I'm dandy. Thank you for asking. How about you?
I am fine. I'm live in Chicago. You're live in New York. And every time we do the Deep Six, we bring you 6 stories that people are talking about or will be talking about. And we just give you some perspective on them from our point of view. It's a couple of friends talking about stuff. And Patty, I think you agree with us. The way we would like people to perceive this, we hope they do. It's like you're riding on a subway. There's 2 people talking and you keep trying to eavesdrop a little more because you want to hear what they're saying. That kind of thing.
Exactly. And you miss your stop, which has happened to me.
That's our goal, to have you miss your stop.
So you can listen in.
The Deep Six. Story number 1.
All right. Obviously, this is number 1. We have to talk about Alec Baldwin and this horrific tragedy that occurred on the set of the movie Rust. What we think we know is that Alec Baldwin was rehearsing with a gun. He was told the gun was a cold gun. In movie terms, that means nothing in the chamber. And he was practicing a move where the holstered gun is on the opposite side of your shooting hand. So you reach across your body to grab it,
whip it out,
pull it up, whip it out, and then point it. And in this case, he's pointing at the camera because the shot he would be shooting at that point, pardon the terminology, would call for him to point the gun directly at the camera. The gun fires. This woman that was killed, she is directly behind the lens, obviously sizing up her own shot. She's hit. The assistant director, I guess he's the director, is standing behind her.
The director is right behind her. So it went through her chest, out her back, and into his clavicle, which is that bone that goes across the very top of your chest, shoulder to shoulder. Yep. Horrific. She was 42 years old, had a 9-year-old son, husband. She was really, her career was really just starting to really take off. Now,
and we don't know what we don't know, right? I mean, we don't know if that's the way it went down. That seems to be the most credible reporting we've seen so far. Everybody wants to know the answers now. How could it happen? Did he pull the trigger? Did the gun fire on its own? It's bizarre. Now, as you know, I did some very unimportant bit part acting in the 90s in a few films.
I think it was essential, actually.
In some of them. But I was also did some TV stuff, including some recreations. Like there was a show called Unsolved Mysteries.
Sure.
So in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, and in one of the movies I did called Crossing the Bridge, there were both gun scenes. And I had never been around a set with a gun. And it was amazing to me. And we're going back to the 90s now, but it was amazing to me the care that was taken when it came to a gun. There was a person who many of you have read this over the weekend. They're called an armorer who comes on the set. You're run through the rehearsal without touching the gun. You then see the gun. You go through the drills with the gun. He shows that the gun isn't loaded. The gun is then handed to the principals who have to have the gun. And it's all a very careful process. And the minute the director says cut, the gun's taken away.
Well, that's actually not even remotely the way it came down from what I'm hearing from people who were, witnesses there. They're saying that the guns were sitting on a tray. They had been prepped by the armorer. And by the way, the gun that was fired had been used for target practice earlier, which is why they think there was a bullet left in it. But they were laying on a tray. The assistant director said, "Hey, let's run through this scene, Alec." He grabs one of the guns, hands it to him, and we know what happens next. The armorer was a 24-year-old woman. It's only the second film that she's worked on. The first one that she worked on, she did a podcast with someone, talked about how she just really didn't feel ready for that job. But then by the end of it, she felt pretty good about it. Her dad is like a really well-known armorer in Hollywood that works on really big films. She's young. She's probably not very expensive. A lot of the people on the set of this film were non-union employees. The union made really quick note of that because the whole film only had a $6 million budget. So they were, really bringing in help that had not been fully trained. But the problem is people that worked on the set, 7 people actually walked off the set just hours before this shooting took place because they were complaining about everything from lifestyle stuff, not enough food, they're not staying close enough to the set. But also because they said there had been 3 misfires of weapons on the set, and that bothered them because there was no follow-up about safety. There was no guarantee it wouldn't happen again. So they got a lot of issues here, and not the least of which is Alec Baldwin facing not only trouble as the guy that allegedly pulled the trigger, but also as the producer / executive producer. Those guys have to guarantee safety on the set.
Yeah, and Alec Baldwin, everybody seems to agree, was handed a gun that was called a cold gun. So he assumed it was empty. It's not the first time he's handled a gun in a movie or a TV show. So he may have been a little more casual about it. But as one of the producers on the movie, he will have some sort of civil liability. It's probably going to end up being a civil case. It doesn't change the ending. And the ending's the awful part. And that's Helena Hutchins' 9-year-old son and husband are left without her. She is dead at 42, I think, right?
42, yeah.
Yeah. And Alec Baldwin, I got to tell you, people hate Alec Baldwin. Okay. You can hate Alec Baldwin.
I actually like Alec Baldwin.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. He has his public persona.
No, he's because he's a hothead and he's big mouth. And so.
Right. Yeah, I like him as well. And I don't like some of the things he's done, but I like him as well. And I've had good encounters with him. Having said that, nobody would want to go through what he's going to now go through for the rest of his life. Forget about his career. He's got plenty of money.
Right.
No, but he's whatever
canceled
happens,
all his other projects, at least for now.
As he should. And,
I think
and
the one
guilt
thing,
and all that, it's an awful thing.
Well, there was a guy who's a safety expert in Hollywood, and he said the lesson that everybody that's ever worked on a set with weapons knows is you never, ever, ever point a gun, whether you think it's loaded or not, you never point it at a person. And so generally in a situation like this, they would have a camera set up and he might be pointing the gun at the camera, but the camera would not be operated by someone behind it in case something like that should happen. Right. So this guy said, there's no excuse for ever pointing a gun towards a person. And we all know that. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done any target shooting or anything like that. The first thing you always learn is you don't point it at a person and you don't point it up in the air. You point it, if you're holding it, you point it at the ground.
Right.
And so this guy was kind of taking Alec to task for not paying attention. He said that's the first rule of gun handling on a movie set. It never gets pointed toward a person.
And maybe that's the thing we hope people learn from this is never, ever be casual, no matter how much gun experience you've had. Yeah. Never be casual, never assume. Start with the worst case scenario and work backwards because you're holding something that could kill you or somebody else.
Do you think they're going to take guns altogether, like real guns, out of movie and TV?
It's the argument, right? Because you don't need it. Mm-hmm. You can do it with CGI, and the special effects that you have. But actors would make the argument that to get to where they can make the character believable, they have to actually handle the gun. Now, actors may change now, too, in regards to this. But I'm sure there's tons of actors who would say, no, you have to have it. And, there's also the wood block guns, right? The fake guns, which aren't operable at all, but they look like guns. And then you add the smoke and the sound and all that.
And the
afterwards.
Kick from the gun, yeah.
And the kick. So it's a horrible story. First and foremost, God bless her family and that little boy. I know the IFI, the folks at IFI have established a scholarship fund in her name. So if you go to ifi.org, you care to donate to that, that's a meaningful thing. But there's really no words you can say that even make this in any way better.
No, boy, it's horribly painful for everybody involved.
The Deep Six, number 2.
Moving on to story number 2. You have great news for someone like me.
Okay.
I like to maybe take a nap wherever I feel like taking a nap. And now you're telling me I can do it on a bus?
You can do it on a bus. And the interesting part of this is it is in, I believe, Hong Kong. They decided that they watched how many people fall asleep on public transportation. And they decided, why not give them an opportunity to do it safely and just ride around? Now, you've had babies. When you can't get a baby to sleep, like the first thing you do is toss them in the car seat in the back of the car, and you drive around, and before you know it, a little tiny snore is coming out of the car seat.
And the baby makes noises too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where they got this idea. So they have outfitted, this tour company has outfitted a bus. You take a 5-hour, 47-mile ride. You can bring slippers and a blanket and a pillow with you. Depending on where you sit on the bus, it can cost up to $51, but as little as 13. And you just drive around and sleep. I think it's kind of an interesting idea because it's that vibration thing that if you're like tense or you can't get away from people or whatever, you just say, you know what? I gotta go hop the bus. I'll be back in 5 hours.
Right. Now, that's the thing that struck me about the story is the length of the ride. If my nap's not 5 hours, can I get off? Because 5 hours, in a lot of cases, that's a full night's sleep.
Wow, that's a really great question. I think that would make sense that they would have. Yeah, but then wouldn't that disturb the 5 hours?
The other people would wake up.
Okay, we're stopping if you're a 2-hour sleeper. No, I don't think that would be.
So I guess you have to
different buses for different lengths.
Yeah, maybe, or you have to commit to the whole ride. But I'm thinking if you're not able to nap, or if you're 30 and out or an hour and out, because again, 5 hours, that's a long nap.
Yeah, that's like almost a night's sleep.
That is.
I'm with you.
So we need to do more. We need to do more deep dive on this item of the Deep Six. But we want you to know it's out there. And what country?
Hong Kong. And I was wondering, will the Deep Six pay for me to fly to Hong Kong and scout this thing out? Okay.
Yeah, we've got some people right now working on the paperwork for that.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Signatures. Yeah. There's no question. So we'll see if it comes to America. But right now, Hong Kong, because everything's going so well in Hong Kong, why wouldn't this be a good thing?
This would be.
Might want to get a bus.
That's a good point. You don't know where you'll wind up.
All right, story number 3. Obviously, I have to touch on the news of the week or the last few days of COVID. What can you tell me about COVID Kyrie?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's a lot of upset in New York because Brooklyn Nets have a superstar, Kyrie Irving. He makes $35 million a year to play basketball for them. And but he is really committed to not getting a vaccine. And he also says he's committed to the people who have chosen not to get it, and it's cost them their jobs. So the NBA said, okay, it's going to cost you at least part of your job. And at first it was that he couldn't play in any home games because New York has a vaccine mandate for any of the big venues. But he was able to play on the road. But then there was a lot of bitching and back and forth about that. And they said, okay, you can't play at all. But he does get pay for any games that are played away. So it's costing him about $15 million to sit out for the season. But he's still making like $20 million.
Has he said why he's so against it?
He just said he doesn't feel like the government has a right to tell us what to put in our bodies. And he's also really disturbed that there are, these vaccine mandates in the city going into effect for everybody from workers, city workers, cops, firefighters, teachers. And he just says, I don't think that that's fair. So that's his take on it. And I'm not going to question him, but it's really caused a huge uproar. In fact, recently at a game at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, a huge mob showed up and they kind of went nuts. It was kind of like January 6th at the Capitol. They were like screaming and they rushed the door, and people by the door pulled back because they were overwhelmed, but they didn't let them get in. For the most part, they were able to lock the doors and just allow ticket holders in.
The thing that seems to be missed, at least in my opinion, is that this just isn't about you, person who doesn't want to get it.
Right.
The more unvaccinated people we have, the more ability there is for the virus to replicate and create more variants. Mm-hmm. And more variants can kill. You can have the virus, you can spread it without knowing because you could be asymptomatic.
Right.
You have a right to your own body. You don't have a right to mine or somebody else's. And that's why vaccinations on a public level are so important. And when people aren't doing it and we have something as deadly as this, mandates may be the only way to protect everybody. So, but the guy obviously has some strong beliefs, right? If he's going to give up $15 million.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had vaccine mandates in the past. Back in the 60s, children would go to school and get vaccinated against polio. And then a little bit later on, measles, mumps, rubella. And actually, I read this article. It goes all the way back to colonial times. During the Revolutionary War, George Washington mandated that his troops be vaccinated against smallpox. And in those days, it was not a really nice procedure. What they would do is they'd take somebody who had smallpox, they would scrape, and you'll love this word, at the pustules on that person.
Oh, that's a band I was in.
Yeah. And they would take the goo that came out, they would cut the arm of the person being vaccinated and insert that goo into them. They'd get a mild form of smallpox. And there was like a 3% mortality rate. So it didn't always work the way they wanted to. But the other side of it was they said that an enormous number of lives were saved among the troops there because they just didn't get smallpox in the aftermath of that vaccination process.
Yeah. And I think that the thing people need to wrap their head around again is don't hurt others.
Yeah. In
your quest to, be right and all that. I don't understand it. You're double vaxxed. I'm double vaxxed. I'm going to get the booster when it's available. Mm-hmm. It's just the science doesn't lie. Oh, speaking of the science, you mentioned the mandates in New York. As you know, there's a state called Texas.
Yes.
They don't.
I thought that was a country.
They think it is.
Yeah.
And they don't believe in any of them damn mandates. And 140,000 people packed in to see a Grand Prix race there over the weekend. And I don't know that there were 140 masks in the crowd of 140,000. So that makes you crazy. Yeah. The only other thing I'd throw in with COVID is this. Dr. Fauci is really, really, really mad at Rand Paul. Rand Paul is a senator from Kentucky. Mm-hmm. Rand Paul, I believe, is an ophthalmologist by trade.
He's a doctor, right? Yep.
Right. So he should know more than he seems to. But Fauci is very well controlled with all the crap he's taken in the last year and a half. But he was on with Stephanopoulos on the Sunday program on ABC this week. And he was ready to punch Rand Paul. And I just would like to say, I would encourage Dr. Fauci to punch Rand Paul. Rand Paul got tackled in his own yard mowing his lawn for a reason.
Right.
Fauci is about 5 feet tall, probably shrinking. He's 80 years old. I would take Fauci all day long if you asked me to wager on that bout.
Well, here's the thing about Fauci, by the way. Yes, he's teensy tiny, but that guy runs like 5 miles a day at the age of 80. And he was absolutely the star player and the captain, believe it or not, of his basketball team at a Catholic school here in New York City years and years ago when he was in high school. He's pumped up. He's ready to go.
Yeah. And listen, I think the guy's fantastic. And I love what he's done. He didn't have to do it at this age, certainly. And there's no way we could ever quantify the lives that he's saved by doing the right thing.
The Deep Six, number 4.
Story number 4. Tell me about this Kellogg's Pop-Tart controversy. What do we know?
Well, what we know is somebody wants $5 million because they're all blown out of shape that their Kellogg's Pop-Tarts strawberry version doesn't have as much strawberry in it as you would think.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a mix of other fruits.
Why wasn't I told?
Other fruits with strawberry flavoring and a few strawberries, I guess. I don't know. So they're not only taking them to court, trying to get $5 million to pay them off for their pain and suffering, but in addition, they want them to have to change the labeling and possibly the name, maybe even the recipe for the Pop-Tarts.
See, I have considered all of the things I spend time doing. I would never spend a moment thinking about how many strawberries are in my Pop-Tarts.
Let alone trying to find somebody who can tell you how many.
Yeah. You got to get your top scientists involved in that area, I suppose.
That's exactly right.
There's another story here, which the courts are busy enough, aren't they?
Yes.
It's slow enough in court.
Oh, my Lord.
There's a lawsuit that is underway in France. And as best I can describe this, because we don't really have time to go into it in great detail, and we'll give you a headache if we do. But there are a couple of former Miss France contestants. So they're beauty pageant contestants.
Right.
Who are suing the organization that produces the beauty pageant that would eventually give you a winner, Miss France.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying the pageant is biased, unfair, and judgmental because the criteria for picking Miss France is, well, is she pretty? So in other words, the beauty pageant.
This is a beauty pageant?
This is a beauty pageant. Former contestants suing because it's all about beauty. What?
So then why even bother to go into it if it bothers you?
Right. Right. If you'd like to be Miss Average, Miss Next Door, God bless you. That's great. That's most of us.
Oh, my God.
But Miss France, and the French judge, I'd like to be in the room when the French judge throws that out. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
All you gorgeous women, get out of here.
Right. And stop it already. And then there's one more story in this category before we move on. And that is a story that comes from when I was a little kid. There were these places, A&W root beer places.
Yeah. You would drive up and they'd roller skate over to your car.
Yeah. And it wasn't like it was a thing from the 50s. It was like throwback, a nostalgia thing. I'm talking about 70s and 80s. And
80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
They still exist. There's A&Ws around.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've wondered in the last couple of years, is America really this dumb? Apparently we are. So explain this to me again, the hamburger problem.
Well, it started back in, I guess, I don't know, sometime the 90s, I guess, when McDonald's came out with their quarter pounder.
Yep.
So I'm not sure what year that was, but at the same time, and everybody went nuts. Ooh, a quarter pounder, 4 ounces of beef. And A&W thought, well, we'll show them. We'll do a third pounder. The problem is the average diner at A&W thought that a third pounder was smaller than a quarter pounder. And you said it perfectly. Why?
3 smaller than 4.
Right, exactly. So it was a big flop. It was not a Whopper, but a flopper. And they still had that burger on the menu, I guess, wherever they still are. Now they decided
Fractions are hard. Here's
what we'll do. We'll have the same burger, but we're going to rename it. It's the new 3/9 pound burger.
Okay.
3/9. It's still the same thing. It's about a third of a pound, maybe a tiny bit more, actually.
But 9's bigger than 4.
Right. Exactly.
Why don't they just call it bigger than the quarter pounder burger instead of bringing in fractions?
More meat.
Right. That's what we respond to. But it is startling that America would go, I'm not getting one of them third pounders. That's how they get you.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
how they screw you. Right? Get one of them quarter pounders.
Exactly.
It's depressing on some level.
The Deep Six, number 5.
All right. Now, before we leave the Deep Six, we go to story number 5 because Patty Steele heard Mornings with Scott Shannon on WCBS-FM New York and wherever you stream.
Right.
You have information on how we could all be more charismatic.
Well, certainly you don't need this information.
No.
You are the poster child for charisma.
Totally.
But for the rest of us, there's a psychologist in the UK who says people like Kim Kardashian, I don't know about that one, George Clooney, I'll go with that, Beyonce, yep, David Beckham and Madonna are some of the most charismatic people in the public eye. And he says, you too can become super charismatic. And he says the way you can do that is when you're in a conversation with somebody. In other words, I'd be talking to you and I would say, Steve, have you heard this story? Use their name. He says that's really important. Have good posture. Oops, God, I'm all bent over here. Have good posture and avoid using and like. I'm not good there. Are the best ways to charm someone. Be very direct. Say what you're going to say. He also says mirroring someone's body language. In other words, if you lean in, if they've leaned in, you lean in. If they kind of move their head around, you move your head around. You're mirroring their body language. It makes them feel like you're really watching them.
Right. Okay. All right.
And then he says, tell stories, tell all kinds of stories, but also make sure you listen to their stories. That's the most boring part because people like you and I just like to talk, right?
No, but honestly, you're right. But honestly, listening is the key, period.
That's the best conversationalist is the person that listens.
Don't think about what you're going to say. Talk to the person.
Talk to them. Right. Listen and respond to that. He says, use your hands. And then he points out.
What if you're not Italian?
Okay. Just, you got to do it. Okay. You got to figure out a way to do it for emphasis. Mm-hmm. And finally, he points out that in the case of George Clooney and David Beckham, especially, they show humility and warmth, which automatically makes people feel validated and elevated so people can identify with them more. They don't walk into a room and say, you know who I am, don't you?
Right.
I'm Patty Steele. I'm Steve Cochran. They say, hey, nice to meet you. What is your name? I'm Patty. And they do it that way because that draws the person in. So I think those are interesting pointers, Yeah,
the other thing I hadn't thought about, I guess, is mirroring, because at what point does mirroring look like you're mocking someone?
Yeah, right.
If they have a tick, do you do the tick as well? Right?
No, you don't do that. It's just kind of, when they're smiling, you're smiling back. You're just kind of watching their response and going along with them on that ride, whatever their ride is,
It's going to take some practice, kids. Get in the mirror.
Yes.
Start working it out.
The Deep Six, number 6.
All right, finally, story number 6. A little bit of a roundup of the TV world. We know with sadness that the actor that played Gunther on Friends has died.
Yeah, he really kind of made that character really take off on that show. It was interesting because he was just supposed to be sort of a sidebar character in the Central Perk Cafe or whatever.
Yep.
But he became his own being there.
James Michael Tyler is his name. He'd been battling prostate cancer for a while. He was only 59. Mm-hmm. But in a different way, he was as impactful as, and I can't say Kramer, but every great sitcom has that character that just drops in.
Right.
So in the same way you remember Janet from the show. Oh my God.
She was great.
Yeah. So Janet, you remember Gunther, and Gunther was great. I was just sorry he never got to sleep with Rachel. I was rooting
that
for
was
him.
all he looked for. Speaking of Rachel, did you watch the latest episode of Morning Show?
I did. Where is Jennifer Aniston? I'm worried.
I think she's in Maine. I think she went back up to her house in Maine.
Her main house?
Yes, her main house.
What if she went to Italy to go see the Steve Carell character?
Ooh, that would be creepy, especially during COVID. Well, of course, it's the very beginning of COVID on the show right now. I just kind of think I can't make that commitment for her.
Okay. But she's missing on the show.
Right.
Reese Witherspoon is still involved in her new lesbian relationship. Right. Seems very happy. Mm-hmm. What's the name of the network executive? Corey. Yeah. Corey's very sad because apparently he's in love with Reese Witherspoon.
I think so too. That hasn't been spoken, but it's so the look of longing on his face as he watches her. And then she talked to him about the fact, hopefully nobody's, has missed this episode and I'm telling anything.
Well, we're giving you time to catch up. Yeah.
But when she says how much it means to her to be around, I can't remember the name of Juliana Margulies' character.
I can't either. Not off the top of my head.
Peterson is her last name. Okay, whatever. Who cares? The fact that she says, this is somebody I think I've been looking for in my life for a long time. And you see Corey's face. It looks like utter devastation. And that's sad.
Yeah. And if anybody's ever stood there, well, somebody who you had a thing for,
right,
and they didn't know, and they didn't feel the same way, were telling you about their relationship and how happy they were. It was like being stabbed.
Yes, exactly. It's like the last thing you want to hear. And you do see him in a couple of scenes where he's looking at her, talking to her girlfriend. He just turns and walks out of the control room because they're on TV together. So, yeah. But Jennifer, that's a whole different thing. It's weird.
I don't know if you ever watched the post-episode quickie they do where the characters talk about that episode.
Yeah.
And there was a great summation of Corey, I think by one of the writers, maybe one of the producers or directors, doesn't matter, but said, it's tremendous the way he can show what a huge heart he has and then do horrible things.
He's such an asshole.
Yeah. And have equal passion for both.
It's true. Yeah. And it's actually kind of real. That actually brings me to a show that I really want you to watch. I think I turned you on to Ted Lasso, didn't I?
Yeah. Love Ted Lasso.
We love Ted Lasso, loved Jason Sudeikis on Saturday Night Live, loved his comments about Americans not loving soccer or kindness, but they love this show.
Very funny monologue.
The next show I really, really, really want you to watch is You. Penn Badgley stars. Season
YOU, it's called?
YOU.
Okay.
Season 1, he's working in a bookstore. He's this brilliant guy, really not only understands literature on a really deep level, but the making of books. Like he can repair these books that are worth thousands and thousands of dollars. He understands and loves and treasures great literature and beautifully made books. And this young woman comes into the bookstore and she's this, gorgeous, tall, of course, lithe, blonde, and they start talking about literature and he falls in love with her. And basically what happens eventually is he kills her, puts her into a glass box in the basement of the bookstore because she's just not doing things the way she should be doing them. But he moves through a lot of people like this, guys, women, and he doesn't want to be a killer, but he just wants to make things right. And if somebody is not doing things correctly, man, they got to go. And eventually in season 2, he meets an adorable young woman who is a pastry chef who actually does the same thing he does. And they don't want to be killers. They have a baby now. They've moved to the suburbs in season 3, and they don't want to be killers. It's just that sometimes stuff happens and you got to take care of it. Much like Corey on the morning show. You can be a really delightful person, but sometimes you got to kill somebody.
I would just think, that maybe you and I as parents, we would say, first, before you kill someone, use your words. Maybe sit down and talk with them first. But is this a dark comedy? Or is there nothing funny about it? It's all about the psychological thriller part.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't call it a comedy. It's dark, that's for sure. But it's a very deep look into the psychology of someone who very smart, capable of a great deal of planning. But you can really see that this season. And they truly don't want to do this. They certainly don't want to get in trouble for what they do. But sometimes stuff happens and man, they just got to do away with somebody because that person's not a good person. So let's just move on.
I will watch it. I don't want to give away anything, but what the hell's going on with the glass box thing? What is the glass box about?
Well, the glass box gives them a moment to breathe in between. I mean, sometimes they just outright kill somebody, but other times they get the person, they put them in the glass box, and it gives them a chance to question them. And then they try to figure out, is there a way that at some point I could release this person back out into the world without getting in trouble myself? And pretty much they always realize that, no, that's probably not going to happen because you lock someone in a glass box in your basement for days on end. Probably they're going to tell somebody when they get out, despite their promises not to. So
you got to have them somewhere,
Yeah,
you got to commit to murdering someone. You got to think it out.
Exactly. And you've got to figure out while they're in there, okay, if we're going to get rid of them, where do we take them? How do we get rid of them so that no one will ever find them and no one will look at us, young parents who've just moved to the neighborhood and are very loving to neighbors, exceptionally loving to neighbors, that kind of thing. So sure. It's an interesting look. It's not just
it's a new take on an old topic. There's plenty of serial killer stuff out there. Killing Eve was a great series. I don't know if they're coming back with another season because they got shut down by COVID with everybody else, but Killing Eve was great. Dexter, I never watched, but people love Dexter. Mm-hmm. And Bill Hader in Barry, which is a dark comedy.
And you love him in that, but he kills people for a living.
Right. But I got to say, what you're describing is unique. I also have to say, because I know we're out of time here, I'm going to have a background check run on you because you're so fascinated by the show.
And because I'm so comfortable with Penn Badgley killing people that need to be taken out.
Yeah. And if I come to New York soon, I will see if there's any boxes in your basement. I will be concerned enough to look. I'm just saying.
Please don't pack heat, though. That wouldn't be good here.
It would not be a good thing. All right. Look, she's Patty Steele. You can hear her every morning in or on New York radio on WCBS-FM, where she's been a legend forever. And she's great, better than ever, frankly. So listen wherever you stream, including something called the Odyssey app. Good luck.
Or go to pattysteele.com because not only is my other podcast, News on the Rocks, there, but the Deep Six is now there as well. You can find that there. And
you can find the Deep Six where I spend time, and that would be cochranshow.com, where you can also get my regular podcast, which is called Live from My Office. But we thank you for listening. And there's show notes to let you know how to get in touch with us. Social media will follow, and you'll be able to track us down there as well. But thank you, Patty.
Promise never to kill you.
Okay, all right. Cross my heart. Hope you don't die. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah, right. So we'll see you next time when we do it again. It's called The Deep Six. Thanks, Patty.
Thanks for listening. The Deep Six. Subscribe, rate, follow, or review at pattysteele.com or cochranshow.com.
Thank you, Patty, and look for a scheduled brand new Deep Six next Friday as well. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy yourself, your life, your family, and all the good things you have. One thing I wanted to plug for the regular Live from My Office podcast, we're going to do a couple of shows from the Lincoln Museum. Those will air on, I'm checking my calendar now, November 8th, November 10th. November 8th and November 10th. They're coming up, along with a lot of other great guests as well. Thanks again for listening. Tell your friends, subscribe, rate, like, review, follow. You know the drill. And download this podcast for somebody and subscribe for them as well. Somebody that's a little podcast wary. Thanks for being here, and we'll do it again. Coming up, live from my office. I'm Steve Cochran. Thank you, Ross Cochran, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.